This is Lightning Power Lunch with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli on Lightning Radio.
Yeah, we're just getting ready for playoffs. Playoffs is tight games, 1-1, 1-0, 2-1, real tight, low-scoring games. So, if we can just play hard defense and just keep building for the rest of the games out here, that's what we want to do.
Proud Papa. Oh, yeah. Good defense. That is the case. By the way, this is Power Lunch on Lightning Radio. Dave Mishkin's on the other side, of course. We are taping, but if you still hear some sticks and some ice and some skates, Mish is at the morning skate?
Yeah, we're not early. We're slightly early.
Slightly early.
This is due to the bus schedule, which you guys are accommodating me. I'm like, if we go at noon, I'm finding my own way back to the hotel, which I could do, but so Ottawa is having a skate right now. The Lightning will be starting their skate. So when people hear the show, the Lightning skate will be basically over. But I can tell you the other proud Papa has rejoined the Lightning because I saw Luke Glendening this morning.
Oh, good. It's very exciting. So he's going to have himself a game. That's usually how that plays out.
Nick Paul had a pretty good game. Nick Paul's up to 198 points. We've had all these milestones, right, recently. So Nick Paul's at 97 goals and 198 points.
And how many of those points have come as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning? Because I feel like
look that up.
Jared,
I mean, he's played far fewer games. Actually, I shouldn't say that. He's had far fewer seasons with the Lightning.
That's what I mean.
With
it's
Ottawa,
more impactful.
Yeah, but in terms of games, let's take a look.
I'm going to talk while you look. How about that? Can we do that?
So adding the Lightning number up should be. So these are games with the Lightning. So last year he played every game. So 162 plus 21 is 183, and he's got another 70 or so. So he's at about 250, and he's at 478. So he's actually played more games with the Lightning than he did with Ottawa. And the actual numbers, there is a huge, stark difference. So with Ottawa, 25, 26, 27, 28, he only had 29 goals. So he has scored, 68 with the Lightning.
Wow. Impressive.
I didn't bother doing the points, but you get the picture. He is definitely very happy with Tampa Bay.
Why wouldn't he be?
Yeah.
I mean, he's in the prime of his career. He's got an opportunity to win, although the team the Lightning are playing tonight probably feel like maybe they've started to turn a corner.
Well, I will tell you, because
but
Gord Wilson joined us for one of our shows when the Lightning played Ottawa in Tampa. Those are two of the biggest wins the Lightning had this year. Now, it does look like Ottawa is going to make the playoffs. So those two losses that Ottawa had to the Lightning started a 5-game losing streak for Ottawa, all in regulation. Through the end of the schedule before the Four Nations, they came out of the Four Nations, lost 2 in a row. So they lost 3 in a row before the break. They lost the first 2 coming out of the break, and then they got hot. And they've been very, very good since then. But Ottawa is farther from clinching a playoff spot than the Lightning are. The Lightning just need 2 points. Ottawa's farther back. So I saw Gord this morning, and we touched base, and I'm like, hey, congratulations on the season. He's like, no, don't say anything. I'm like, Gord, I know from the outside.
Come on, Gord.
Ottawa's making the playoffs. This is a race for the second wild card. I know mathematically it seems daunting, especially when you're coming off a loss, which Ottawa is. But, I mean, the schedule. Oh, my gosh, Greg. Ottawa's been a good home team this year.
Yeah.
8 of their last 9 are here at home. Now, they lost the first game to Buffalo, but it's a combination of Ottawa is just not going to let this thing slip away in my mind, even though they're going to go their second straight game without Brady Tkachuk. We can get into the particulars of tonight's game. And what have the other teams that are behind Ottawa showed us? They showed us that they kind of can't get out of their own way. I mean, how many of these teams have gone, forget about a run like St. Louis, how many of them have gone 6-4 in the last 10? So, look, I may be proven wrong. We still got a couple of weeks left in the regular season. I would be beyond shocked if the Ottawa Senators are not in the playoffs this year. And the strong likelihood is that they're going to face the division winner of the Atlantic.
What's interesting about all of this is that so self-promotion.
Yeah, go for it.
I was on Sirius XM NHL Radio earlier
good
today.
for you.
And I'm going to be on this afternoon.
Yeah, isn't
Scott
that Scott Laughlin's station?
9:30. 9:30.
He's
almost
like,
Scott.
come on.
Yeah, so
he's joining us tomorrow.
he's
but
gonna
was
join us
supposed
tomorrow.
to be joining us today.
But I'm on with Boomer at 2:30. So they
Okay.
both pinged me at the same time. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll do it. So it gave me a platform to talk about what you and I have been discussing about Ryan McDonough.
Yeah.
And they really didn't flinch at maybe they disagreed. I couldn't tell, but they didn't flinch. They did talk about Gensel and how the dynamic of Stamkos not being there, and then Gensel basically filling that void. But they asked the question about, do you think the Lightning just kind of flew under the radar this year for a lot of people? That they weren't expected to be this good. And we kind of got into how important is it to get into first place. And so that narrative is out there. That's being talked about, I can tell,
Well, it's
nationally.
one of the compelling races because now
Right.
in the West, I mean, it's over in the West.
Yeah.
It's
It
not
is.
over, but it's over. There's no race for the wild card.
No.
The top 8 are getting in. The
And
East is a different story, but it's one spot. So, yes, that's one storyline. They're
Yes.
like, ooh, the Atlantic. And look, it is a storyline. The Ovi storyline is certainly commanding a lot of attention. And then, there's some jockeying for some of these other spots.
And
The
so-
Kings and Edmonton.
Yeah.
Edmonton might fall into the wild card, actually. But, I mean, is
Yeah.
that a huge deal? So people are looking at, well, what are the storylines? And this is one of the storylines.
Well, on the
The
storyline,
Lightning, Maple Leafs, and Panthers, 1, 2, 3, very close together.
and where do they want to finish?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the question. And I think the stance we've taken has been pretty sound in that if you can't win the division, can you get home ice? Because you got to feel like that first round series, if you are that 2-3, is just going to be a bear. It just is. And so if things are pretty evenly matched, what is going to come down to being the difference in that series? And if you believe home ice is, and partner, you brought up this point, we've been talking about it, the Lightning are drastically better on home ice than they are on the road. Now, does that mean they can't do very well on the road in the playoffs? Of course they can. But at least their record this year indicates they are a much better team on home ice. And it's not like small. It's a
Right.
pretty wide margin.
I'll say this, though, Greg. I believe there is a significant difference between what it takes to have success on the road during the regular season and what it takes to have success on the road in the playoffs. Because the road in the regular season, some teams have done very well. I'm actually looking at the breakdown. Toronto's basically the same at home and on the road. So Toronto's done well on the road. And there have been some teams. The Lightning historically have had a very good road record during the regular season. But it is different in the playoffs.
Yeah.
There's no travel disadvantage for the road team because both teams are on equal footing. Now, the one thing Doug Plagans told us about the Stanley Cup final last year, which there is some truth to that, and he got it from Paul Maurice, when you're facing a team that's far away, the team that does not have home ice has to make the extra trip, right? Like there's one extra trip there, fair enough. But, I mean, both teams are on equal footing, and, there's no back-to-back, right? There's a back-to-back. Both teams are playing the back-to-back. Doesn't mean that the road team is going to, win a series. Historically, the home team usually, by the home team, I mean the team with home ice advantage typically wins the series. But navigating the road portion of an 82-game regular season schedule, 41 on the road, is a lot more challenging with the elements. The quality of the play in a playoff series is higher. But you figure if you're getting in the playoffs, you're able to play at a high level. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
We've seen examples where the Lightning have had a much better road record in the playoffs, even if it's a short playoff run, than they had during the regular season. And they've been less good at home
Yeah.
in the playoffs than they have been
I think
in the
it's something
regular
to talk
season.
about I probably tend to agree with you from the perspective that I think this team, there's a certain focus probably on the road that they'll have and that they will be better.
They showed it against the Islanders the other night. I mean, all the players were talking about, I mean, you too, I like their whole game. But, I mean, especially once they got the lead, the way they played in the final half of that game and especially in the third period, that was winning hockey on the road, regular season or playoffs.
And I think, some of their best wins have been on the road this year. I mean, they've played some of their better games. They have. I mean, the record maybe doesn't indicate it, but they are capable. I don't know if that's a huge deal. I think it's more of a talking point, so I acknowledge that. I do think, push come to shove, I think we heard Victor Hedman say it the other day, they would like to start on home ice.
Players have said they'd like to have the home ice.
That makes sense.
In the first round. Whether
that's just, look, we like to play in front of our fans, or subconsciously they know they play better on home ice than on the road. I mean, that can be up for debate. Regardless, the Lightning, that narrative is out there being discussed. I will tell you that nationally. And then I think the other question was just how good this team has become defensively and why is that?
I think, so they asked you the question, have the Lightning flown under the radar? That's not really a question for us because we're in the bubble, the Lightning bubble.
Yeah, right.
Not the Toronto-Edmonton bubble. And, I felt they had it in them from basically the start of the year. You needed a little convincing, but you've seen it, and you're like, yeah, they're a better defensive team this year. And if they were going to be better defensively this year, and that was the objective. That was the objective from management. That was the objective from the coaching staff. That was the objective based on the players that they brought in. If they were going to do it, you figured that they would be a better all-around team. And I think that the easy narrative outside the market is simply, well, their window's closing and they didn't bring back Stamkos, and it's going to be, it's going to be the time for other teams. The Lightning's time has started to pass. If the Lightning get in the playoffs, they'll kind of squeak in as a wild card team and have another first-round exit. They may have another first-round exit, but it's not because they squeaked in as a wild card team. It's going to be because they faced a really good opponent in the first round and happened to lose. So, yeah, I think that the league was asleep on the Lightning. But the people who cover the league are looking at 32 teams. They're not going to get into the nuance of what is the impact of McDonough's return? What is the impact of a healthy Vasilevsky? What is the impact of bringing in a strong two-way player in Jake Gensel, who is also, by the way, a really talented offensive player who can slot in on the top line? What is going to be the impact of having a J.J. Moser slot in on defense and solidify things? And what is going to be the power play percentage this year without Stamkos, which was, we didn't know the answer to that either. But again, as we look at the start of play today, they're sixth in the NHL. Power play.
If you're going to be a national reporter, though, you fancy yourself
figure that out.
You fancy yourself as being somebody who knows those things. So my sense would be this is where narratives get in trouble. This is where at the beginning of the year you have people talking about certain teams that they don't see, probably admittedly. You can watch. I mean, nobody's going to sit here and watch every hockey game every night. You're going to have the TV on, probably in the studio if you're working, but you can't watch every game. You know what you need to do? You need to have beat reporters on probably constantly, and they do, to fill them in. But this is where those narratives get out of whack. And this is where those awards come in at the end of the year when you have, well, I thought the best team was going to be the Vancouver Canucks. What was that based off of?
Last year.
I just kind of read up on it earlier this year. Okay, so when that doesn't happen and the Lightning are really good, you got to either pivot or you're stubborn and you don't move from what you had as your initial take.
Yeah, I mean, look, we see that outside of sports too. People have an opinion.
Heck,
it can be difficult to get them to move off of that opinion.
I know.
I saw something today that I guess, so I'm guilty of this too, but I am very upfront about the fact that I don't follow the other teams and follow league trends as closely as I follow the Lightning, and I don't follow other teams or league trends probably as closely as some of our listeners and viewers do. They may know more about stuff happening outside Lightning land than I do. I tend to get zeroed in on the other team when the other team is the Lightning's opponent, or in this instance, they're in a race with Florida and Toronto, so certainly I'm paying attention to that.
Right.
But what I saw this morning that kind of jumped out at me, and I'd missed it up until now, Cale Makar has 29 goals on defense. He
That's
is one
incredible.
away from 30 goals from the blue line. And I saw that, and I'm like, if he gets to 30, and he should, I mean, they've got a handful of games left, fewer than the Lightning, because McKinnon got a point last night. So he and Cooch are tied, but Cooch has a couple of extra games just left. Colorado doesn't have as many games left. If Makar gets to 30, he'll be the first defenseman in NHL history, or the first NHL defenseman to do it since Mike Green did it in 08-09. 08-09. My kids were infants in 08-09.
I know.
And if he does it, he should get the Norris Trophy. I know we have talked about the Norris
Dave,
Trophy.
come
But
on.
you know what? If you hit 30 goals, that is a remarkable
Sure.
accomplishment.
Sure.
And the next closest guy, I believe, is Quinn Hughes at 20.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
that's
going to confirm that. But, like, that is extraordinary, and that deserves recognition.
plus 40 or 30 goals. Plus
Well,
40
yes,
on the back
Ryan
end.
Ryan McDonough has had a
30
very,
plus
very
goals.
good season.
I know.
But plus 40 from the blue line is not. It's not something that hasn't been done since.
What's the next
2009.
closest? Let's have some fun with
Werenski.
this.
I'm sorry, I said Hughes. Werenski has 20, and Jacob Chychrun has 20 as well.
That's actually a sneaky good.
Yeah, but Werenski's
year.
played on a very high-scoring team. Not that he doesn't deserve his 20 goals. He does. He scored against the Lightning this year, and Chychrun's playing on an excellent team that everything has fallen into place, and he can score. But he's playing on a good team, and he's doing it. But if he were playing on San Jose, he probably would have had a harder time scoring 20. Makar, 29 goals, though.
Impressive.
Yeah,
Did he miss time
I
this
think
year
so.
too?
he's played 76 games.
76 games. Okay.
So,
So maybe
Colorado is at
No, I mean, that
76. So he's played every game.
he's played every game. Okay.
Yeah.
Impressive.
That's
Impressive because-
extraordinary. So then I looked up, the most goals by a defenseman in a season was Paul Coffey with
Gonna say
Edmonton.
Coffey, yeah.
48 goals in 85-86. And then Orr is Orr had several that were just slightly below that. Orr's best offensive year in terms of goals, and we should ask Phil about this when we see him next. Coffey had 48, that's the most. 85-86. That Oiler team didn't win the cup. They lost to Calgary in the second round when Steve Smith in Game 7
Was that
accidentally
89?
put the puck into his own net.
What year was that? Was that 89?
85-86.
85-86,
So the
okay.
Oilers won cups in 84, 85, 87, and 88. You can make the argument that maybe their best team was actually the team that didn't win the cup, 85-86. But they lost to their arch rivals in the second round, and Calgary ended up going to the Stanley Cup final and losing to Montreal. The Patrick Waugh coming out party year was 85-86.
Yeah.
But Coffey had 48 goals that year for Edmonton. Bobby Orr had 46 goals in 74-75. If you look up Bobby Orr's career stats, that was basically his last season. Because after that, his knees just wouldn't allow him to play. I'm actually going to look up what his numbers were the next year to give you a point of comparison. So in 75-76, he only played 10 games. That was right around the time that Phil got traded. Because I think, according to Phil, the Bruins were like, we need to find a replacement.
Yeah.
Best we can for Bobby Orr, so they got Brad Park. So Phil was traded to the Rangers for Brad Park. Brad Park had a good career. Brad Park played really well for the Boston Bruins and was a very good offensive defenseman. He wasn't Bobby Orr. But you think about it, the year before Bobby Orr basically had to hang him up, and he played in the 76 Canada Cup, too, on basically one leg, the story goes. So that was the next year.
Right.
But his last real year of playing in the NHL, and it's not like he sustained an injury out of the blue. This was a chronic problem
Right.
that he was dealing with that got worse and worse and worse and worse. 46 goals. His high
That's
water
incredible.
mark for goals came in his final, we'll call it productive NHL season. That is incredible. Because he probably was basically already playing on one leg.
Yeah, right.
At that point. So,
50.
or had the second most. But, it's a different game now. I know defensemen can score, but clearly it's very difficult for a defenseman to reach 30 goals in this era.
It's a lot of people would say it's better offensively than it's been in a while, but it's nothing like it was in the 80s still. Goaltending's better. Schemes are better, and players are better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just is. So where does Bobby Orr's goals that last year stand in comparison? Now that's probably more impressive with everything you just gave.
Yeah.
In terms of what he accomplished. Coffee with what he was able to do, that's impressive too. I mean, you almost hit 50 on the back end. That's saying something. He could skate like the wind. I mean, he was incredible. And Makar,
and shoot.
is just different.
I mean, he could drill it from
could.
distance too, Coffee.
He could. It's incredible how he played. Now, that's a guy who played with Gretzky and Mario.
He had the longevity that Orr didn't.
He did. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but he's getting closer to breaking Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record. He's, 3 away now?
3 away from breaking the record. 2
By the
away
way,
from tying. He scored a 5-on-3 power play goal.
Do you see some of the
Carolina
teams?
players were like, "Yeah, it's a 5-on-3. You know he's going to score." Brendan Moore's like, "I wasn't crazy about the penalties that gave him the 5-on-3, but yeah, he's basically going to score there."
Some of the teams he's playing towards the end of the regular season, they are not good defensively, and I think the last game of the year they play Pittsburgh. That's going to be interesting. But I think there's Columbus in there. I think there's also some teams that he may do it. I mean, that's a really good chance.
Twice. Chris King was telling us about that.
Yeah, and I think it's up to like 65% chance. Now, they do these percentages that he's going to break it.
Well, they're really going to look for now that he's this close. I mean,
you
were
have
like
to, right?
8 or 9 away at this point. Might be tough, but
so
it's giving them certainly something to focus on down the stretch. Even as I'm not sure their game has been quite where
probably
it
not
has been for much of the year.
And I wonder if he breaks it when he does, if the team kind of resets a little bit and says, okay,
well, they're
going
to have to reset regardless before the start of the playoffs.
Here's the focus.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, though, maybe an unpopular opinion, but I was actually thinking about this. If he breaks the record this year, do you just give him the MVP? Based off of the historical implications of what he did this year, breaking the record.
Well, I just made the argument about Makar.
You did. But I mean, would anybody quibble?
I would say no.
You would say no. Okay. I mean,
Brian Engblom actually said he thinks Hellebuck is going to win the Hart Trophy, which
really?
We've seen goalies. Yeah, I guess he didn't say that on the air because you would have heard him say it.
No, he might have. Maybe
so he must have said it to me off the air. But it was the other night when we were doing the game together.
Yeah.
And look, Hellebuck's numbers. I mean, Hellebuck is going to win the Vezina.
He's been incredible.
Right. How much of what Winnipeg has done this year is due to him, though?
I mean,
maybe he has taken them from a really, really good team to potentially winning the President's Trophy. I don't know. But that was Brian's take. I hadn't really considered Hellebuck for the Hart, and that's my own bias, right? Because I'm like, he's going to win the Vezina. But look, you can make an argument for Hellebuck in the same vein that, we have talked about
with Ryan McDonough.
Right.
By the way, I think we're the only two people who've said this. And
we even had a fan be like, Vasi's the MVP of the team. I'm like,
well, and that's fine.
Well, look, that's a fair argument, too.
You're not going to get a ton of pushback if you think Vasilevsky is, 1, the best goaltender in the game today, and 2, the most valuable player for Tampa Bay. I mean, okay. Yeah, I mean, his numbers would indicate he's playing at a very high level. But honestly, Dave, one of the things that I was talking about with the guys today on SiriusXM, his goals against at 2.16.
Yeah.
It's as low as it's been since, I think, 2020, 2021. And so why is that? I don't think it's because Vasilevsky has gotten better as a goaltender. I think it's the team in front of him has been a lot better.
Fewer scoring chances against.
Yeah. Now, he's healthy, too.
He also, they've pulled the stat out, and Ben Pierce had it. And again, I think they're getting it from these websites that are tracking high danger chances, which we've been over this. If you're new to the show, I'm not going to get on my soapbox again. Suffice it to say, I believe that there is some accuracy, but it is not completely like pinpoint in terms of accuracy about like determining the difficulty of saves. But I will grant that it's in the ballpark when we're talking about high danger chances. Vasilevsky's save percentage on high danger chances, I believe, is number 1 in the NHL. Ben had that stat. So when you have him on tonight, you can ask him about that.
See, that's pretty impressive.
Right.
I mean,
so it's not only that the Lightning are allowing, fewer scoring chances. Here it is. I'm reading from the game notes. Andrei Vasilevsky has an .860 save percentage on high danger shots on goal of the season, the highest such rating in the NHL, according to NHL Edge. So, Steve, is NHL Edge a reputable? Is that more reputable than these like random websites? Steve can respond.
That's a good question. I've never heard of that site, but that doesn't mean it's not reputable.
That is the league's
Maybe it is.
advanced tracking. Okay, so the league is tracking this. I put a little bit more stock in what the league is tracking. Again, what they are looking at is shot location. So they are determining where the shot originated. And if it was in a dangerous area, they would call it a high danger shot. And it has to be on goal. So, okay. We can, and also all the goalies are being compared apples to apples there, right? But it goes to your narrative, which is Vasi is facing fewer scoring chances. That's not from this NHL Edge, but we're saying it because we watched them. But also the scoring chances that he is facing, he is stopping at a higher percentage than any other goalie in the NHL this year.
It's pretty impressive. And so what do you do? What do you do when the margins are pretty close when it comes to goaltending? Are you just looking at wins? Or are you looking at how well the teams are doing? I mean, both Tampa Bay and Winnipeg are doing extremely well. I would venture to say, again, it goes back to the narrative at the beginning of the year. Who had a higher ceiling this year for a lot of people that cover hockey, Winnipeg or Tampa Bay? Mm-hmm. I mean, I wasn't really following Winnipeg. I always felt like they've underachieved in the postseason, so maybe I wasn't paying a ton of stock in what the national pundits were saying about this year coming into this season. But I do know with the Lightning, it felt like a lot of people were saying, yeah, I think it's a playoff team, but not a contending team. Okay, so where we are right now, 75, 76, 77 games in, how much has that changed? And if it has changed, has it been Andrei Vasilevsky and his play that has been a big reason for that if you are starting to really compare who should get the Vezina Trophy? And I think Vasi makes as good a case as anyone, but I think for people who really follow the Lightning, what you would say is Vasi's been really good. Johansson has as well. He hasn't had as many games where he's had to stand on his head. That's probably because the team in front of him has been better and more responsible defensively. And then you ask the question, well, why is that? Well, can one person make a huge difference on a team collectively? Harder to do in hockey, but I would say in this particular instance, we would say yes. Ryan McDonough and the impact that he's had, not only with his play, but also on Eric Chernak's play and everybody else, has been pretty elite, which is why we've made that distinction. So, again, hard for a national pundit to really dive into that without watching all of these games.
Yeah, that's why they had you on. Twice, actually. So you did one this morning and you have another one this afternoon?
Yeah, Boomer wants to have me on at 2:30. Okay. Which this is good for us, though, because then I can swing it back and say, okay, we'll come on our show.
Yes.
So Scott will be on.
Probably have figured out. It is just you and me today. I do have one other nugget that's pretty interesting, because remember we were talking about the Kucherov situation at the last home game where they had the empty net and they didn't score right away and they had the turnover, and we had some questions like, why is Kucherov out there in the 5-on-6? And I said, I don't remember the Lightning allowing a 5-on-6 goal late in the game that allowed the other team to tie and force overtime this year. I don't remember it happening. So I saw Nigel Kerwin this morning down in the locker room area. He's one of the video coaches. And I said, Nigel, do you remember off the top of your head, like, how many 5-on-6 goals the Lightning have allowed this year, and have any, I said, I don't think any have led to the game being tied. And he said, I agree with you. He's like, I don't remember one instance when the other team was down by a goal, pulled the goalie, scored to tie. He said, let me go ask Jeff Blashill, who kind of oversees the 5-on-6. And while he was doing that, I found in the notes, you can see the category 5-on-6, and the Lightning have allowed 2 such goals. But the 5-on-6 not only counts goalie pulled down late in the game trying to score, it also counts delayed penalty. So on a delayed penalty, the goalie goes to the bench, and it's a 6-on-5, and if, the team that's getting a penalty doesn't touch the puck, play continues. So if a goal is scored there, that also counts as 5-on-6. So while Nigel was conferring with the coaches, Chris Cran was like, I can actually look that up, and he had a way of finding it. So there have been 2 instances this year when the Lightning have allowed a goal 5-on-6. One of them was during a delayed penalty. It was their home game against Washington, where the Lightning lost 5-4. It was, I actually remember after he showed it to me, I remembered it because it annoyed me because the Lightning hadn't touched the puck. They were up 2-0. There was a delayed penalty upcoming on the Lightning, and Eller tipped in a shot for Washington to get them on the board 2-1. The Caps eventually tied the game. Lightning took the lead. Caps tied it. Lightning took the lead. Caps tied it and ended up winning. That was one. That was the Caps' first goal. It was on a delayed penalty. It was not down in the game late, 5-on-6. The other one came against Ottawa. It was one of the home games. It was the first home game in that 2-game set the Lightning had. Lightning were up 3-2. Ottawa pulled the goalie. McDonough scored into the empty net. 4-2. Face-off. The Sens pull the goalie again. Batherson skates in and scores. I remember how unbelievably ticked off Phil was about that play. But that goal from Batherson just made it 4-3, and that's how the game ended. So the only time the Lightning have actually allowed a goal, we'll say late in the game, when the other team has pulled the goalie, was a game in which they were up 2 because they already scored an empty net goal. So when people were like, well, why is Kucherov out there? Well, Kucherov has helped them score a lot of empty net goals this year. He himself has scored empty net goals. He has set up teammates to score empty net goals. And, knock on wood, I mean, it's hard to argue, like we're, 74 games in?
Yeah.
And the Lightning have not given up a goal late in the game to surrender a lead. And the other team got the game to overtime. That's really impressive. How many times have they been up in a game where the other team has pulled the goalie and that team has not scored except for one instance? Once. I thought that was interesting. So we got confirmation on the times that it happened. And you have to do a little digging because there's this kind of separate category that counts statistically the same with the delayed penalty. But you're going to have a different unit out there. Like when there's a delayed penalty, it's whoever is out there, right? 5-on-6, late in the game, Coop, unless it's after an icing, Coop can set his unit. And we were talking about McDonough, who's out there on defense. I mean, unless it's a long goalie pull. But it's going to be McDonough, right?
That's right.
So he's contributed too. Like, why is it that the other team has had such a hard time, down by 1, scoring a 6th attacker goal to tie the game? It has not happened against the Lightning this year. How many of those sequences have we seen McDonough as one of the defensemen out there?
Yeah.
Probably just about every one.
I was going to say probably all of them, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe he doesn't play the whole time. If it's an extended goalie pull, the Lightning have to get a line change. Maybe there's an icing. They have other defensemen out there when the other team pulls the goalie. But Lightning have had some 6-on-4s, too, where they've been shorthanded and the other team has pulled the goalie and they haven't scored.
They have.
So
it's a good point.
Ottawa's
just to kind of recap,
skate. You can probably hear the Zamboni going. So the Lightning will take the ice here in about 15 minutes.
In a little bit. Just kind of recapping what happened last night, and then we'll get to some questions. Rangers beat the Wild in OT 5-4.
And they're doing well in terms of that first tiebreaker. So just getting the 2 points was always more important, but the fact that they didn't get it in regulation doesn't really affect the Rangers at all.
No. We talked about this yesterday. The Leafs beat the Panthers 3-2.
Yeah, in regulation.
Pierre LeBrun, did you happen to read The Athletic today? Was talking
No.
about Tkachuk and his injury. And
yeah, what's going on?
I guess he's
You're talking about
skating.
Matthew Tkachuk.
Matthew Tkachuk.
Because
Apparently
Brady is hurt too.
Yes.
As we just said.
Yes, but it sounds like he could give it a go today. He was held out last game. It sounded like a precautionary
Which
situation.
one, Matthew or Brady?
Brady. And then
Brady's out tonight.
He's
so
out
Brady
tonight. Okay.
took a check from Graves. They played Pittsburgh
Yes.
2 games ago. He took a check he wasn't expecting. It doesn't sound like it's a long-term thing, but
No.
he look, they want him healthy. They're going to need him healthy
Yes,
for the playoffs.
for sure. And that might be the hardest hit Graves has had this year. So he was probably surprised that he hit somebody. But
Now,
Tkachuk
okay.
Matthew, apparently it's a groin injury.
Mm-hmm.
So LeBrun was kind of, they said lower body, and from what he's hearing, it is a groin injury. So it is a very
Tricky.
delicate situation, no pun intended, dealing with that. I mean, because we know how important he's going to be. I think LeBron basically was saying because he's a gamer, he's going to be ready to go for the playoffs. But, look, those groin injuries, if that's the
Right.
case, partner,
I mean,
that
that's
can
one of
be
those. You can be a
tough.
gamer, but it's going to
Heck
affect
yeah.
your ability to skate.
Unbelievable. So, I mean, that could just be one of those instances. You just let him skate, try and rehab if you can, build the strength up, heal, but you're not playing until the playoffs start. And then from there, you're doing all you can to get him ready to go. That is a big question mark.
Yeah.
For
and
the
I don't know what
Panthers.
happened with Barkov, but he didn't play last night either. I mean, you
Interesting.
figure if he was at all able to play, he would have played in that game.
Yeah.
For
I would
Florida.
agree with that. Yeah. So,
Did you see the 2 goals? So it was 1-1 with about 10 minutes left in the third period. Toronto scored 2 goals, one with about 10 minutes left, one with about 5 minutes left. And then the Panthers scored a power play goal with like
Reinhardt.
2.5, 3 minutes
Yeah.
left. Yeah, and that was the final. Did you happen to see the 2 goals that gave Toronto the 3-1 lead?
No, but I can watch them while you're talking.
Yeah, well, you should watch
the
it.
highlights.
So Marner scores for 2-1. He zipped it in high.
That was a bullet.
far
Yeah.
side. Yeah,
Yeah.
Bobrovsky.
I just
he
saw
was
that,
screened
yeah.
a little bit too.
Bullet
But the
shot.
3-1 goal, Marner makes. It is like. Is it an 80-foot pass?
That's
it
a
is
dime.
an
They call it a
incredible
dime.
pass to Nyes. Nyes
just
has
saw
a
it.
little bit of a partial breakaway, but enough of a breakaway to get the shot off, and he scores.
Yeah.
Marner is incredible. I am very curious to see what happens
Wow.
with that contract. There is room.
I'm watching that again.
Yeah, there is room for Toronto because the cap is going up, depending on what else they want to do. But the fact that this guy is not locked up yet, you many teams would be salivating to get Mitch Marner on their team. I have no inside knowledge of what's happening with that contract, but this guy in a 1-1 game, he scores the go-ahead goal, and then Nyes has a great finish there, so it's not like Marner scored the 3rd goal, but Nyes doesn't get that breakaway if not for Marner's pass. Marner facilitated the 3rd goal as well.
That pass, that you threading the needle.
Yeah.
Threading the needle. That was
I
incredible.
encourage the fans to go and watch the
Please
highlight.
do.
On the Nyes
Please
goal
do.
especially.
And great finish. That's part of
great
it.
finish.
Marner, the reason there's been speculation about breaking the big 3 up, and if you want to call it the big 3 with Matthews, Nylander, and Marner, is just because they haven't done anything in the playoffs.
Yeah. And Tavares is up after this year too, and he's having
By
a
the
good
way, how many
offensive
goals
year.
does
He's
he
getting
have?
close to 40 goals.
Did anybody have
38?
John Tavares, not to be confused with John Tavares, having close to 40 goals, right? Who
Yeah.
had that on their bingo card, partner? I think, for me,
Well, it's a
I
contract.
am,
The
Is it a
cynics would
contract
say,
year?
well, it's a contract year.
I think, out of the big 4, if you're asking me to choose, I think I'd feel more comfortable parting ways with
Yeah,
Tavares
they might
than I would the
re-sign
other 3.
Tavares, but they would re-sign him at a
At a lower
friendlier
rate.
number. Yeah, which will open up
At a
more
lower rate.
cap space too. 'Cause
So, I
his
am a big
contract
believer.
Will be going down.
In keeping your talented and your star players, because I think ultimately star power is what wins you championships. Now,
Yeah,
that means a lot of different things. They got to buy in defensively. You probably got to be really solid in nets. You've got to have pieces on the back end. Understand all of that. But those three players, Marner, Matthews, and Nylander, partner, don't want to speak too soon. They are on a path to become Hall of Fame players. I mean, they are. Just the numbers alone. I mean, Matthews, nobody would argue that. You and I have talked about Mitch Marner. He's one of the elite point producers in today's game. And Nylander, I mean, the last 3 or 4 years, he's become a tremendous point producer. I mean, those are players you build around, not trade. That being said, we have seen over the course of the history of the NHL, when teams want to shake things up, they will trade a star player and see if he can get some stuff back. I can give you great examples of the early 90s with the Pittsburgh Penguins and, getting a Paul Coffey or getting the Ulf Samuelsson for John Cullen and getting Ron Francis back. I mean, there are shakeups that can be made. Jaromir Jagr traded. Ski was traded. I get that. But typically, when you have three players like that in the prime of their careers, unless you're getting something really great in back that's addressing a need, and it could be a position or just you want to get some team toughness, so you bring in guys who play that style of play, or maybe you get your elite goaltender, I think you keep those players, and you find a way to work it.
Yeah.
But I also understand you are in Toronto. Maybe there's more expectations and pressure the players feel than what we really understand. I don't know. But I think at this point, my thing would be you got to do what you can to win with those players because you've hit on those three players.
Yeah.
I mean, do you disagree when you have star players? I mean,
I agree with you. I mean, I don't know who you would willingly take off that team. And there's always the argument of like, well, we need different chemistry, and it's not like the Leafs have been swept in these playoff series. They have won games in the playoff series that they've lost,
and they've been a handful for the Lightning.
Losing in Game 7.
Yeah. I mean,
but ultimately, what have they done? They won one series.
I know
with this group, and that's
do you think it's fair?
What sticks with them?
Do you think that is fair? When you start looking at what they've accomplished and saying, like, how do you judge Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, or any player that's had great regular season success? They are the elite of the elite. Most people would take Austin Matthews. If you had three players to choose from to start a team at the forward position, I'd venture to say Matthews is probably in the top 3. Maybe in the top 5.
I think what is stuck with the people who have squawked about them, and it's not like they've squawked about them all the time, because as they're like having great regular seasons, the squawkers are not really squawking. It's usually as a playoff series is unfolding, and then maybe they get to an elimination game, and those guys are not able to come through with a big play. But, often in elimination games, it is hard to score. I mean, the game that the Lightning won in Toronto in 2022, Game 7, was 2-1. I mean, it's not like there were a lot of goals scored in that game. Was it Riley? I think Riley.
Yeah, it was Riley, I think.
Tavares had a goal taken away, and then Riley scored.
Yeah.
So Riley got the goal for them. But it's not like Marner and Matthews and Nylander have, like, gone through a playoff series with 0 points. I mean, maybe it's happened at one point. They just had an assist. But I
think
seem
you got
to
to
think
build.
that when the Leafs are successful in a game in the playoffs, usually Marner and Matthews and Nylander and Tavares are contributing. It's just that they've had a hard time winning 4 of 7.
Let me ask you this. Whose team do you like more? Now, look, we've seen both. We don't follow all of these teams. I think you said it accurately. But the teams in the Lightning's division, we have a better pulse than maybe out west. I think that would be fair. Whose team do you like more?
The way I see it right now, I think Toronto is flexing its muscles when it needs to ensure that they're going to get into the playoffs and finish as high as they can. And I think that they will, under Berube, look to take it to a higher level when the playoffs begin. And under Berube, I think their capacity to defend the way that you need to defend to win in the playoffs is there's a greater likelihood of that. there's no guarantee that they're going to win. I mean, they're going to face a tough matchup, as we've talked about for the other teams. But I think Toronto, it's going to be show me for Toronto. As we've just said, one playoff series win since this group got together, and they got in for the first time in 2017. They made the playoffs every year since. So I think what they can do in the playoffs is probably flex their muscles defensively in a way that we've seen periodically through the regular season. I mean, they've had a little bit of a bumpy regular season. They've had a good regular season. They're going to make the playoffs, but it's not like they're running away with the division or anything like that. Florida has had happen to them what I think happens to a lot of teams when they go to 2 straight finals. Like, it's just hard to grind out another high-end regular season. They've had injuries. They've had some games where they've looked completely off. Bobrovsky's not been able to bail them out like he did, maybe in some other years. I mean, remember, they were the best defensive team, tied with Winnipeg in the regular season last year. They're nowhere near that mark this year. I mean, they're okay. I think they're a top 10 defensive team, but they aren't. Actually, I should look that up and see where they are. But it has just been it's been a slog for them this regular season. But where are they? They're going to get into the playoffs. Florida's 9th in team defense, which, that's good, but it's not as good as where they were last year. So I think for them, the question is, are they going to boomerang back into a powerhouse team, which they haven't really shown themselves to be a powerhouse team during this regular season for the reasons I just detailed? Are they going to boomerang back to a powerhouse team once the playoffs begin and they're like, we want back-to-back? And some of it is going to be contingent on their health. Like, in what shape is Matthew Tkachuk going to be in when the playoffs begin? So I think there are questions for those teams to answer.
And
but I wouldn't sleep on the Panthers. I mean, don't be mesmerized by the fact that, they're losing some games and they've had some games they've given up a lot of goals. And like we saw with the Lightning, they kind of have a little ho-hum during the regular season. They're like, we're going to turn it up when the playoffs begin. And generally they did. Now, sometimes it took them a little while to rev the engine. Like that early part of the first round, they had some hiccups that happened in 2021 and 2022. But then they kind of hit their stride and became really, really tough to beat. And look, Colorado was a locomotive engine that year in 2022, but I would have loved to have seen the Lightning healthy in that series. They weren't. And they still took Colorado to 6. They were very, very, other than the one blowout, they were very, very close games. Lightning were the wrong end of 2 overtime decisions. Like, that series could have gone the other way, even though Colorado was playing at an extremely high level, and the Lightning had no Braden Point to speak of, and they had Cirelli with one arm the last couple of games. And they had to run through 3 100-point teams on the way to the final. So they were playing about as well as they could, given the circumstances. But in the first round, we remember Game 1, they lost to Toronto 5-0 in 2022.
Yeah.
They needed an overtime goal from Braden Point to extend the series in Game 6. They had some wobbly moments in the first round. They had some wobbly moments in the first round against Florida in 2021.
Sure.
Neither team could stop the other team from scoring, or scoring chances, I should say, early in that series. So will that happen with Florida? Kind of like, all right, we're in the playoffs. Can they just literally flip the switch? I don't know. But they have a championship pedigree. They know what it takes to win a playoff series, and that's what we said about the Lightning during that 3-year run as well.
I want to get some questions.
Lightning are kind of
they out there
doing their warm-up before the skate begins.
All right. We'll keep an eye on that.
Let's get to some questions.
Let's get to some questions. Listener from Spotify, Pete says, I've never played hockey, but I played and coached a lot of basketball. In basketball, energy is derived from the defensive end. Good, hard, and aggressive defense carries over to the offensive end, and it creates a lot more transition opportunities. Hockey feels similar in this regard.
So I think
Kind of talked about that.
and we were talking about like why is defending particularly hard in hockey as opposed to some other sports. And look, he's right. Basketball is a fluid game. Hockey's a fluid game. Like hockey, a turnover can lead to a chance the other way. In basketball, yes, we don't see as many turnovers, but sometimes a missed shot, rebound, you get it in transition, right? So good defense can lead to offense. I think the point that I was trying to make was, so much of basketball is based on defending in basketball is based on like effort and energy.
Yeah.
And your willingness to compete and play hard. And you need that in hockey too. But in hockey, there's just the playing surface is bigger and there's a lot more coming at you from a defensive standpoint than in basketball. But the point that the fan made, the listener made, like I agree with that. I agree that, energy on defense is really important and can help feed your offense. And I don't know nearly as much about basketball as I do about hockey, so I'm kind of making a broad stroke generalization that may not be accurate. People who know basketball better might, if they're listening, they're like, you're completely wrong. There is a lot coming at you in basketball, and it's equally challenging.
Both are fast-paced. I think the difference there with basketball, you may have a chance to impact things more defensively because you're not constantly subbing guys in and out.
Yes.
In other words, if you have a defensive stopper or a really good defensive team, there's a good chance not only your system's working, but those 7-8 guys, you're probably not going to your 12th or 13th man either. So
right.
More
and they allow zone now in the NBA, which when I was growing up, that was a
no-no.
Yeah, you couldn't play zone. So I mean, you can tweak your defenses a little bit more now in the NBA. I mean, you could always play zone in college, but
right. Let me get to this email from Jim, our good friend Jim in Jacksonville. It says, I agree with you on your thoughts on the Rangers. Should be a lot better as they have very good players. Hey, for next Monday's Power Lunch, can you try to get Sam Rosen on? Would be great to hear his perspective, and of course for you to wish him well for his retirement. Maybe Phil can join you for the final game of the year at MSG for Sam's send-off. It might be a critical game for both the Lightning and the Rangers. Jim's setting up our
thank you,
our
Jim.
show.
I can see if Sam is available. I think based on your schedule, we have to pre-tape on Monday, which may complicate getting a guest a little bit.
That's true.
But
that is, yeah.
Look, we can make the ask. If not, we can maybe try and get him on before the season ends. I did see that his old broadcast partner, John Davidson, is rejoining him in the booth, not for the Lightning game, but I think it's for their next game. They play in the 9th. And look, Phil was able, actually, I should back up. Brian Engblom said he was not able to get out to Nick Nixon's ceremony, which happened the other night when the Lightning were playing the Islanders. Phil did go to New York for the ceremony honoring Sam, which preceded, obviously, his final broadcast. But look, the Rangers hope they get in the playoffs, and Sam probably is hoping to get the first round, which he would get if the Rangers get in the playoffs. But if the Rangers miss the playoffs, that final game, 82, Lightning and Rangers will be his final broadcast.
Hard to believe that the Rangers would miss the playoffs with all that talent, but we have seen crazier things.
They're tied with Montreal right now for wild card too, but Montreal's the game in hand. That's why Montreal holds that spot. And Montreal is hosting Boston tonight.
Christina says, sounds like the Crunch are trying Groshev at left D. He's played that position the last 2 games with Santini as a partner. I'm intrigued.
That is news to us. Thank you.
I know
Christina.
Groshev's had some off-the-ice issues.
Well, yeah.
Is that putting it kindly?
Yeah. But I had no idea
I have not paid attention
he
to
had
what he
any
is.
background as a defenseman.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Al says, is Roman Schmidt the next Chernak? The right side D position is strong in Syracuse with Crozier and Schmidt. I don't know.
I don't know either. Schmidt had a goal in a fight. Was it last night? I think it was last night.
Was it?
They had a big win against Belleville. I did pay attention to this because we were talking about Syracuse and playoff positioning. So entering that game, Syracuse was in 5th in the division, and the top 5 get in, and the 6th place team does not. And Belleville was in 6th, 3 points back. So that was a 4-point swing right there. Syracuse won the game, 5 points up on Belleville, and I think leapfrogged a team 2. So teams 3, 4, and 5 are bunched up in that division for Syracuse.
Beautiful.
But they're going to need a strong finish to get in the playoffs. But right now, they control their own destiny. I think that was their last game against Belleville. They maybe have 7 or 8 games left. So Belleville would have to, make up 5 points, basically, over the last 8 games.
Oh, we got clinching scenarios. Steve just texted us. The Lightning will clinch a playoff berth if they defeat the Sens in any fashion, or if they get 1 point versus the Sens and either of the following occurs. The Canadians lose to the Bruins in any fashion, the Blue Jackets lose to the Avalanche in any fashion, or if both the Canadians and Blue Jackets lose in regulation. I mean, there's a good chance something happens tonight.
Yeah,
where there's a clinch.
So basically, the Lightning need 2 points.
Yeah.
The easiest way for them to get 2 points is to get 2 points. If they don't get 2 points, there are 2 teams that they would need not to get 2 points. And it can be those teams lose in regulation, or the Lightning get a point, and both those teams lose a point. So we'll know more clearly at night's end, because both Montreal and Columbus are in action.
Gotcha. Well, those questions came in, and we appreciate that. Again, we are taping, and
and I was watching them run the lines, Greg. So they had a 4th line. Glendening is back, as they said, with Girgensons and Chafee.
What's it look like?
Chafee played well against the Islanders. I don't know if that means that he is going to stay in the lineup, and the Lightning would keep Glendening or bring Glendening back and keep Chafee in there and go 12-6, or they're going to go 11-7 without Chafee or with Chafee and put somebody else out. Probably by the time this show airs, we'll have more clarity. Fans can follow along, but that's how they ran the
Chafee responded.
And Vazzy's in the starters now.
Okay, good to know. Chafee responded the way you would anticipate somebody who's been out.
Absolutely.
And so that he wants to get back in the lineup. I don't think you're going to be sitting Glendening. If he's ready to go, he's going to be in the lineup.
Right.
And then I think to your point, it just comes down to 12-6, 11-7. What do you feel comfortable doing?
Yeah.
We got some options. But we will have a recap of the game tonight for tomorrow. And then Scott Laughlin's supposed to join us. So hopefully we'll get that national perspective from Scott, who does a great job. Game tonight is, 7 o'clock?
Yep.
Which means we'll be on the airwaves at 6:30. And I will talk to you closer to the puck drops. We'll do our little back and forth, and then we'll be back at it again tomorrow. And it's just you tonight, correct? The TV guys have to work.
Brian is back on the TV side. So the Lightning have, 4 road games left in the regular season, and it's going to be just me in all 4, unless Phil decides to come up for that.
Yeah. Whatever Phil wants to do, he can do, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
I would say Magic 8-Ball says not likely, but I would love to have him there.
That'd be great. How popular is Phil in New York?
Phil is the mayor of every city he goes to.
He does. Everybody comes
Well,
in.
I should say Phil is the mayor of every press box he goes to.
That's true.
He's the mayor of some cities that he goes to.
I always love it when the...
he holds court.
He really does.
People gravitate to him.
Well, the former players always come up to him, pay their respects, and I always think that's pretty cool. And you should. It's royalty there, which is always a lot of fun. Partner, I appreciate you. We will do it again tomorrow, but I will talk to you tonight in a few hours. Get it going. Thanks to
talk to you in a few hours, and we're live tomorrow. We're gonna have Scott on, but for the fans who keep track of this stuff, live tomorrow. I'll be in Buffalo.
Beautiful
with the team. No,
yes. I'm not going by myself. Why now would I be in Buffalo? I appreciate that. Thanks to Steve Versnick and Jared Johnston. And thanks, everybody, for listening. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.